And I backed the car up, and it got stronger and stronger, and I kept on backing it up until it really got strong, and my whole jaw was vibrating.
From the outside, Lucille Ball appeared absolutely untouchable. A television genius, a business powerhouse, the woman who helped build Resolute Studios and transformed entertainment forever. But behind the laughs, the bright lights, and the iconic red hair everyone adored, Lucille had a front-row seat to a side of Hollywood most people never imagined existed. Before her life ended, Lucille quietly opened up about several actresses who left deep scars on her memory. Not characters they played, not dramatic roles, but the way they treated people when the camera stopped rolling. Some were her co-stars, some were industry legends praised worldwide, and every encounter left Lucille more disturbed than the last. One name stood out above all others: Joan Crawford. To the public, Crawford was old Hollywood royalty: glamour, elegance, perfect posture, diamonds dripping from every appearance. But Lucille saw something far darker beneath the polished surface. Lucille worked with plenty of strong personalities over the years, but she admitted no one ever unsettled her the way Joan Crawford did. Where fans saw charm and sophistication, Lucille saw control, coldness, and a complete lack of warmth. She once described Crawford to a close friend in chillingly simple terms, saying, "All she has is glamour, underneath it's just ice." And she meant that literally and emotionally. The tension reached a breaking point in 1971 during Joan Crawford's guest appearance on Here's Lucy. From the moment Crawford stepped onto the set, Lucille felt the entire atmosphere change dramatically. It wasn't subtle either. Crawford arrived with demands stacked high.
Oh, her warning.
Yeah, this is a girl who says that man
well,
has trouble.
This did happen to me, and it was a he. And I went right ahead and married the guy, and it was Gary.
The studio temperature locked at exactly 68 degrees, her chair positioned at a precise angle, and lighting adjusted to flatter her bone structure perfectly. Lucille didn't argue about any of that. What truly rattled her came next. A young wardrobe assistant, only 22 years old, brought Crawford a dress that had a tiny wrinkle, barely noticeable to anyone else. Instead of calmly pointing it out, Crawford exploded. Witnesses recalled her leaning in close and tearing the young woman down with vicious words, calling her worthless and saying even the lowest job wouldn't want her. The assistant ran off in tears. Then Crawford demanded the young woman be removed from her job immediately. That was the line Lucille refused to cross. She stood her ground and said no. And from that moment on, something shifted permanently between them. The tension didn't fade, it hardened like concrete. When the cameras turned on, Crawford flipped a switch instantly, smiling, charming, gracious, playing the part everyone expected. But the second the red light went dark, that warmth disappeared just as fast. Lucille later described it as watching someone shut down, like a mannequin being powered off. She even joked darkly that she'd worked with department store mannequins that felt more alive. To Lucille, this wasn't just bad behavior. It was revealing. She believed how someone treated people with no power showed their true character. And in her eyes, Crawford failed that test completely. This wasn't about rivalry, jealousy, or ego. It was about witnessing someone perform kindness without actually feeling it. Lucille felt Crawford wasn't living with empathy.
The last person I want to ask you about is the lady with whom, in many minds, you are forever linked. That's Joan Crawford.
I know, isn't it incredible we're forever linked? We made one film. It's funny that remained.
I'm sorry.
Well, it was a good movie. It was a good movie. As far as making the film with her, she was on time. She knew her lines.
She was acting it when necessary. That impression never faded. Even in her final years when reflecting on her long career, Joan Crawford remained one of the few names Lucille associated with genuine darkness. Not because of talent, fame, or legacy, but because of how she treated those who couldn't fight back. For Lucille Ball, that memory never softened, never blurred, and never went away. Judy Garland was never a simple story, and Lucille Ball never pretended she was. Whenever Judy's name came up, Lucille didn't react with anger or bitterness. It was something heavier, a tired, worn-down disappointment that said more than rage ever could. Lucille had known Judy since their early MGM days. She respected the voice, the emotion, the raw brilliance that poured out whenever Judy performed. But she also saw what most people didn't. The fallout left behind once the applause faded. Sets delayed, schedules wrecked, people left scrambling to clean up the mess. Lucille once summed it up in a way that stuck forever, saying, "Judy was pure magic, but magic that burned everything around it to the ground." One story stayed with Lucille for years. A television director in the 1970s shared an experience that settled it all. Judy was scheduled for a 5:00 a.m. shoot. The entire crew showed up on time. Lighting, camera, wardrobe, makeup, all waiting, ready. They waited and waited and waited. Judy finally arrived at 2 p.m., glowing, apologetic, full of charm. She stepped in front of the camera and delivered 30 flawless minutes that reminded everyone why she was a legend. And just as quickly, she announced she was exhausted and walked out. The damage came fast.
What is your name?
You know my name.
Please tell the court your name.
Oh, Lucy Ricardo.
By the next morning, 3 crew members were let go because the production had gone over budget. For Lucille, that was the part that cut deepest. Her frustration wasn't rooted in jealousy or judgment. It came from survival. Lucille had built her career by being dependable in an industry that tossed women aside the moment they became inconvenient. Watching someone waste rare talent while everyday workers paid the price felt impossible to excuse. At a private dinner, Lucille said it plainly. Talent doesn't give anyone the right to leave wreckage behind. And with Judy, someone always paid the cost. Lucille never confronted Judy directly. She didn't argue, didn't shame, didn't make a public scene. She simply stepped away and chose not to work with her again. When Judy Garland's life came to an end in 1969, Lucille mourned the brilliance. But not the chaos that followed her everywhere. Judy wasn't cruel by intent, but the damage was real, lasting, and impossible to ignore. Then there was Ava Gardner, a very different kind of darkness. Lucille described Ava as beauty sharpened into a weapon. Ava didn't stumble into causing harm. She leaned into it deliberately. Lucille once said, Ava seemed to enjoy the discomfort she created. That wasn't insecurity or chaos. It was deliberate. Their tension didn't start with a misunderstanding or creative clash. It began with Ava openly targeting people she believed were beneath her. Lucille witnessed it firsthand during a mid-1960s MGM wardrobe fitting. A young assistant nervously presented Ava with a freshly steamed dress. One seam had softened slightly, barely noticeable to anyone else. Ava didn't correct the issue calmly.
That would have locked you.
She zeroed in, mocking the assistant, making her stand there while every flaw was picked apart. The assistant froze, humiliated, struggling to hold back tears. Lucille stood nearby watching the scene unfold, stunned by how casually Ava inflicted embarrassment. To Lucille, that moment said everything. Beauty didn't soften Ava's behavior. It empowered it. From that point on, Lucille kept her distance. Ava represented something Lucille found especially dangerous: cruelty wrapped in charm, delivered with a smile. And for Lucille Ball, that combination was never something to admire. The flaw in the dress was barely noticeable, but Ava Gardner's reaction was immediate and explosive. She stared at the young assistant for a long moment, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably before speaking slowly and clearly. She told the girl not to bother fixing it, adding that incompetence couldn't be corrected with more incompetence. The room froze. The assistant stood there, embarrassed and shaken, unsure where to look or how to respond. Lucille Ball, standing nearby, felt her chest tighten as she watched the moment unfold. This wasn't dramatic behavior or ego acting out. This was something far colder. To Lucille, it felt like Ava was enjoying the imbalance of power. Later, Lucille confided in someone close to her that Ava didn't simply make mistakes, she made victims. That moment stayed burned into her memory. The tension between them only grew sharper with time. At an industry cocktail party not long after, someone casually mentioned Lucille's name in conversation. Ava overheard, smirked, and loudly fired back with a comment that stunned the room.
Hilton like. Tall, Texan, heartless, cold. Stingy, you said. Very. The stingiest husband I've had on the rich style. But rich men are always stingy, girls. Don't forget that. My mother said it's much better to have a generous husband than a rich husband. Right. Well, he was super stingy. One Christmas, he came in the bedroom with tears in his eyes and opened a beautiful jewelry box. There was a beautiful necklace. He says, Conrad, why are you crying? He said, I'm crying because I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't give it to you. And he was crying. Did you take it? Of course I took it, but I lost it. I wasn't crying. He was crying.
What about Frank Sinatra? You told me about
Sinatra is impossible. Sinatra is absolutely thinks that everyone in the world has to faint before him and go to bed with him. And there are some women who don't want to go to bed with him. It's not my type. A little short Italian, and I like going. I like different. I like Englishmen very much.
Calling Lucille a washed-up clown and questioning whether she was still even working. The room went silent. People gasped. Ava didn't blink, didn't soften, didn't backtrack. The remark was sharp, deliberate, and meant to land hard. Lucille wasn't present to hear it directly, but the words traveled fast. To Lucille, moments like that revealed what beauty often hid. She once told a friend that if Ava hadn't been stunning, no one would have tolerated who she really was. In Lucille's eyes, glamour blinded people to the rot underneath. They never reconciled. Ava's beauty aged into legend, praised and replayed across magazines and documentaries. But Lucille's memory of her aged into pure disgust. Even in her later years, whenever Ava Gardner's name appeared in print or on television, Lucille would quietly mutter the same sentence under her breath. People have no idea who she really was behind that face. Then there was Bette Davis, the talent everyone respected and feared. Lucille Ball never denied Bette's skill. She acknowledged her power on screen without hesitation. But behind the scenes, Lucille believed Bette took pleasure in cutting people down. Lucille once asked privately why Bette seemed to enjoy causing pain so much. She didn't need years to form that opinion. The hostility was immediate, sharp, and unforgettable. Their worst encounter happened at an industry dinner in the mid-1960s. Lucille sat only a few tables away when a young waiter accidentally brought the wrong wine to Betty's table. Instead of brushing it off, Bette went in hard. The room went quiet as she verbally tore into the waiter, questioning whether he could even read a label. The young man apologized repeatedly, clearly shaken. Bette didn't stop. She leaned into the moment, stretching it out, savoring the humiliation like it was part of a performance. Lucille watched in disbelief. This wasn't a bad mood or a stressful night. It was deliberate.
You feel the stars are as glamorous and have as much depth today as, let's say, 10, 20 years ago?
Nope.
What's your answer to this? What's your solution to this?
There's no solution unless they train them.
Man?
Later that evening, Bette noticed Lucille and raised her glass toward her in mock friendliness. Lucille didn't return the gesture. She had already seen enough. Afterward, Lucille told a friend something that stayed with her forever. She said, Joan Crawford was cold, distant, and empty, but Bette Davis enjoyed inflicting the wound. To Lucille, that distinction mattered. Lucille respected talent deeply. She admired dedication, discipline, and skill. But she despised anyone who used their power to crush people just trying to survive in the same industry. She once said that greatness should protect people, not break them. That belief guided her entire career. Because of that, Lucille and Bette were never friends. There were no reconciliations, no softening with time, no polite rewriting of history. In Lucille Ball's world, talent without kindness was meaningless, and power without empathy was unforgivable. They moved through the same city, the same era, and the same elite circles. Yet Lucille Ball and Bette Davis avoided each other like oil and water. Years passed, careers evolved, and the industry shifted. But that distance never closed. Even decades later, when Bette appeared in tributes or glossy retrospectives, Lucille quietly declined any joint interviews or shared appearances. There was no dramatic feud, no loud confrontation, just a firm refusal to engage. Lucille had already decided who Bette was, and time didn't soften that judgment. But if Bette Davis stirred quiet resolve, another name sparked something very different. The moment Zsa Zsa Gabor's name came up, Lucille didn't sigh or tense up. She laughed, not out of amusement, but disbelief. Lucille didn't fear Zsa Zsa, and she didn't envy her beauty or spotlight. What she couldn't stand was what she saw as total fraudulence. To Lucille, Zsa Zsa wasn't dramatic or spoiled. She was artificial down to the bone, a walking performance, a woman who turned charm into a weapon while treating people like disposable props. Lucille's disgust took shape at a charity event in the late 1960s. The room was packed with donors, volunteers, and photographers. Cameras flashed as Zsa Zsa floated in, draped in diamonds and furs, smiling like royalty. She played the part flawlessly while lenses clicked. But the moment the photographers moved on, the energy shifted completely. A volunteer politely guided her toward a table. Zsa Zsa snapped back instantly, announcing that she didn't sit with peasants. The words cut through the room. Lucille witnessed it from across the space. That single sentence was enough to tell her everything she needed to know. But it didn't stop there. Minutes later, a young volunteer, barely 20 years old, accidentally brushed against Zsa Zsa's coat while passing by. It was harmless, unintentional, and easily ignored. Instead, Zsa Zsa leaned in close and whispered a threat disguised as sweetness. She told the young woman that if it happened again, she would make sure she never worked another event in that town. The words were delivered with a smile so warm it almost felt polite. Lucille felt sick watching it unfold. To her, that was far worse than open cruelty. It was intimidation wrapped in charm, the kind that left people shaken and unsure if they'd even been threatened. Later that night, Lucille vented to a trusted colleague. She said nothing about Zsa Zsa was real. Not the accent, not the elegance, not even the kindness. To Lucille, fake kindness was more dangerous than honest meanness. A fake person could disarm people, confuse them, and fool the world, and she believed Zaza had built an entire identity around that illusion. What disturbed Lucille most was that nothing ever changed. Years passed, public incidents came and went. When Zaza made headlines decades later for a confrontation with law enforcement in Beverly Hills in 1989, Lucille wasn't shocked in the slightest. She simply nodded and said it made sense. By that point, Lucille had already placed Zaza firmly in a category she rarely spoke about: people who performed decency without ever practicing it. Lucille Ball believed kindness wasn't about image or polish. It was about how someone behaved when no one was watching, when power was uneven, and when there was nothing to gain. That belief shaped every judgment she carried into her final years. To Lucille, talent mattered. Beauty dazzled, fame impressed crowds. But character? Character was revealed in the smallest moments. And once Lucille saw through the performance, there was no going back. Lucille Ball once looked across a room, saw Zaza Gabor smiling for cameras, and quietly said to herself, "There she is, the fake one." That single thought summed up years of disappointment, frustration, and clarity. Lucille didn't believe the danger always came from loud cruelty or obvious hostility. In her eyes, the most dangerous kind of darkness was the one that smiled, charmed, and struck when no one was paying attention. Lucille never forgave Zaza, and she never softened her opinion with time. To Lucille, fake kindness was worse than open disrespect. A fake person could disarm people, lower their guard, and quietly cause harm without ever raising their voice. That kind of behavior disturbed her more than any temper tantrum or public meltdown. By the time Lucille reached her later years, she had seen enough of the industry to recognize patterns. Fame didn't change people, it exposed them. Power didn't create bad behavior, it amplified what was already there. And the stories she carried with her weren't based on rumors or headlines. They were moments she personally witnessed when the masks slipped. When Lucille reflected on the women who left the deepest impressions on her, none of them scared her because of talent, beauty, or status. What stayed with her was how they treated people who couldn't fight back: assistants, volunteers, crew members, waiters, and staff who simply showed up to do their jobs. That was Lucille's measuring stick. She believed character wasn't revealed on stage or on camera. It showed up in dressing rooms, hallways, and quiet corners where no applause followed. And once she saw that side of someone, there was no rewriting the memory. What makes these stories uncomfortable is how familiar they still feel today. Hollywood has changed faces, platforms, and power structures, but the core dynamics remain the same. Image still matters, charm still distracts, and influence can still be used to lift people up or quietly tear them down. So, now that you've heard the names Lucille Ball never forgot, the question turns to you. Which story surprised you the most? Which behavior crossed the line for you? And do you think the industry still protects people like this today? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might spark a conversation someone else wasn't expecting. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, take a second to show support by liking this video. It helps these stories reach more people who appreciate the truth behind the spotlight. Share it with someone who loves classic Hollywood drama and hidden history. And if you want more untold stories, quiet feuds, and behind-the-scenes moments that never made the headlines, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. There's another video waiting for you on the screen right now, packed with even more celebrity drama and revelations you won't want to miss. Tap into it, and I'll see you there on the next one.